From Beyond Marketing, it's the 20-Minute Call, a podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, check out the 20-Minute Call hosted by me, James LeBarry. Today, I'm honored to introduce a guest who stands as a testament to the power of passion, resilience, and the human spirit. Beyond the multiple world championships and co-founding a team synonymous with excellence, my guest's journey speaks to a deeper narrative, one of grit, unwavering determination, and the ability to rise above the greatest of challenges. Dan Brodsky-Chenfeld, affectionately known in the community as Dan BC, is not just a skydiver. He's a legend in the annals of our sport. With over 30,000 skydives under his belt, Dan's achievements are awe-inspiring. He's a 3-time world champion, has won numerous World Cups, and as a testament to his enduring excellence, he will be competing in his 39th Nationals this year. His leadership shines through as the manager of Skydive Perris, where he has played a crucial role in transforming it into one of the world's premier skydiving destinations. In the record books, Dan is a frequent feature, having set and broken several marks in large formation skydiving. But his legacy isn't just about personal milestones. It's about the countless skydivers he has mentored and coached, guiding them to their victories. And for those who wish to delve deeper into his mindset and journey, his book, Above All Else, offers not just the story of a skydiver, but a profound testament to human perseverance and will. But beyond these accolades, it's Dan's intrinsic ability to inspire, to impart wisdom from his myriad experiences that truly resonates. He's a reminder of the boundless potential we all possess. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming a true giant in the skydiving community and an inspiring figure to countless individuals across the world. Dan BC, welcome to the 20-Minute Call podcast.
Hello, James.
Dan, I got goosebumps reading your bio.
I feel like I can only let you down now after all that.
I don't think that's probably the case. I'll tell you, I was so challenged, maybe more than any interview, to do this one with you because there's so much. There's so much to talk about. There's so much I'm curious about. So I thought, hey, let's start from early on. I'd actually like to begin talking about your mom. You've shared your mom on social. She's still with us today. But your dad passed away when you were 4. But your mom's a powerhouse. And I have a feeling the insights about her tell us a lot about you. Would you mind sharing about your mom?
My mom is Mimi Brodsky-Chenfeld. She is 88 at the moment and still living completely on her own, doing her own thing as she always has. She has been a teacher all her life. She's written several books about teaching that are used in colleges, college textbooks on teaching. She is going next month to speak at the National Teachers Conference with thousands of teachers there, where she's the keynote speaker at 88.
Wow.
She is the most incredible human being I've ever met. And it's funny, when you're growing up, she's just mom, right? You don't realize, you just think, this is mom. This is how everybody's mom is. And I remember discovering, sometime around high school, college, that my mom is not your average person. She is not your average mom. But she, from the youngest age, I could just remember her always encouraging us to find anything that we were passionate about, just to find the things that we love, to experiment and discover and search for all the things that brought us joy and inspired us and challenged us. Never from a competitive end. She never was in any way did she motivate us to try to be the best in the world at anything. always to be the best we could be, but to search for that. And she was quite disappointed when, after my search, I discovered skydiving. It wasn't what she had in mind at all.
What did she have in mind for you?
Anything but skydiving.
Having read your book and known you for a while, or observed you certainly, you're dogged. Like, you're a very affable guy, but I've also seen that you have an intensity. Do you get that from your mom?
I didn't know I had it. I might. I mean, she only did things that she cared a lot about. Everything she does is something that's very important to her. And since it is, then she wants to succeed however you would define that. Because, it's that important. So I think in the same way, the things that I'm involved with inside and outside of skydiving, but mostly it connects to skydiving in some way, are all things that I know have a lot of value in the success. Not that the value is anything monetary. Certainly there isn't that in skydiving. That's something that we can't, that we don't aim for as much, but the value in just the joy and the challenge and the inclusion of being able to take on a sport like this with so many friends, and how much we have to look out for ourselves and each other, both from the safety aspect of it as well as from the enjoyment part. So I guess anything that I'm doing, I'm very committed to trying to do the best that I can and succeed. Sometimes that means world championships or world records, and sometimes it just means a great day at the drop zone.
I've never met an 88-year-old keynote speaker. I mean, I kind of get the sense that you're doing just as she was doing. I mean, you're really following in her example. I mean, who keynotes at 88?
It's, I tell her the way, her community of teachers, I feel like I'm doing the exact same thing with skydivers. It takes a special, unique person to want to, and it's early childhood education teachers also with her, and it takes a special person. I know as a father, the teachers that my kids had at a young age, these are important people in their lives. These are huge people in their lives, and it takes a very special breed. And I think in much the same way, skydivers are a very special breed. And when I see her working with the teachers, I think, Mom, we have the exact same job. We do the exact same things.
You mentioned your kids. Either of them interested in skydiving, or they've just been hearing Dad talk about skydiving for way too long?
They have no interest at all. And I don't encourage them. It's not the kind of thing that if they wanted to do it, if they were like me and thought, I've got to do that, it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen, then I would certainly take them. But it's something that people have to want to do for themselves, not because their parents do it or because anybody else does it. Just your own personal passion.
Dana, before we get deeper into our interview, I don't want to assume that everybody knows your story. I think anyone that's been around skydiving for any length of time certainly is familiar with it. But for those that are not familiar, I think the story most well known, because I would hate to corner you that this incident in your life is not, it's certainly not the complete story, but obviously it's gotten the most emphasis and certainly changed your life. So for those unfamiliar, in 1992, you were one of 22 people on board a Twin Otter that crashed shortly after takeoff. Sadly, 16 people perished, and you were one of the 6 that survived. You miraculously recovered from traumatic injuries to go on to become a national world champion. And this is really well documented in your book, Above All Else, which is an amazing read for those that haven't read it. I'll have it in the show notes. But I want to ask you just to give us a frame of reference. There was a piece of your book that really stood out to me, and it comes early in chapter 1. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind just reading an excerpt, and we'll build from there.
Sure. The crust on my eyelashes glued them shut. Using the muscles in my forehead, I finally pried them open a crack. A faint white light was all I could see, like I was inside of a cloud. It was silent. Where was I waking up? Was I waking up? Was I dead? I had no idea what was happening, how I got here, or what was going on. But I did have one absolutely vivid image in my head, a crystal clear picture of something that seemed to have happened just moments before waking up. It wasn't a dream. It was as real as any real-world experience I had ever had. I could remember the entire thing, every action, every word, and every thought.
So that excerpt from the first chapter is describing really your awakening from being in a coma for 6 weeks. How does it hit you to read that? I mean, it's been over, a little over, I guess, 31 years since the accident. Does it feel as real as you read it every time?
I don't read it that often, and it feels very real. It feels very real, and it takes me back there.
The dream that you're referring to is a very crystal vision of an exchange that you have with one of your teammates and someone you've described as your younger brother, James Layne. Can you just take us through that dream, like what you saw, what that was about?
You refer to it as a dream, and I really don't have a better word to describe it, but it did not feel like a dream at all. So basically, the section I just read was first having woken up from being in a coma for 6 weeks. I had this very clear image in my head. I didn't know anything. I had no other memory at all. There was nothing in my head at the moment except for something that felt like it had just happened, just prior to waking up. Coming out of a coma, maybe it was something that happened a month earlier. Maybe it was something that happened right then. But in my perspective, it seemed to have just happened. And that was a conversation I had had with James, who is my teammate, dear friend. I taught him to jump when he was 14 years old. His entire family worked at the drop zone that I ran in Ohio. From the time he was a young skydiver, we had hoped for the opportunity to be able to be on a team together and to win the nationals and go to the world meet. And that's what we were doing. He was with me in California. We were training for the world championships. That's what was happening when the crash happened. And I just remember basically finding myself in free fall. It wasn't like there was an exit from the airplane. I just came into this dream, for lack of a better word, just recognizing I was already in free fall. And it wasn't normal free fall. It was quiet. The wind was just gently suspending me. It was like I wasn't descending. I was being held up by a light, quiet breeze. I wasn't scared. Oddly enough, it was comfortable. It was fine. It was beautiful, but it was definitely weird. I mean, it was not normal. And I looked up, and James was flying down to me like he would on a skydive, like he was swooping me. And he had this very playful, shit-eating grin in free fall quite often, and he had it on his face. And he just flew down to me, and we were talking in free fall just like I'm talking now, not having to yell or anything like that. And he said, "Danny, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "You're not supposed to be here. You need to get back down there." And I started to realize what I thought might be going on. And I said, "Are you coming with me?" And he said, "No, I can't." And I said, "James, we were just getting started. We were just getting started. It was our dream. We had everything. We were just getting started. You got to come with me." And he said, "I can't." It didn't sound like it was his decision, but it was just how it was, and he had accepted that he couldn't. He said, "But it's okay. There's more places to go, more things to do, and more fun to have." He said, "Tell my mom I'm okay." And basically it then said, "But you need to get back down there. You need to go get control of the situation." And I had no idea what he was talking about, but he said it very assertively. And he put his hand in. The way teams do their practice count in the airplane before a couple minutes before exit. We always did that in our own little special way. And he put his hand in, put my hand on top of his. He put his hand on top of mine. I put my hand on top of his, so our hands were together. And he said, "I'll see you later." And it wasn't goodbye at all. It was a definite, I'll see you later. And just before I even thought about it, I just said, I know. He started the count. Actually, he started the count. We did the count first, and then he said that. But he said, ready, did set, go. We clapped, and then we would high 10 with the whole team. And then he said that. And as he did, I started to descend. He started to fade from my grasp. And I went into free fall and woke up. That's how I remember it.
No. Thank you for sharing. Short of calling that a dream, being that it's so visceral, it's so clear. And I've heard you tell that story both in the book and on video, and it never wavers in detail. I feel for our listeners, as I've watched you express it, that it's not coming from a rote place. It's coming from, I'm seeing you recount it from your brain as if it were yesterday. Would you say that that's almost sort of a religious experience as much as anything?
I mean, I'm not a particularly religious person, but it definitely confirmed any spiritual questions or beliefs that I had.
Not to get too deep here, but I anticipate that being that was so clear, that, I mean, you have me believing that you'll see him again. The message was so clear. Coming out of that, one thing that, in the hero's journey, as it is, Dan, of, our hero comes from this terrible tragedy of losing a good friend in James and teammate, and then picking themselves back and moving forward. And that's like what the Hollywood version wants to hear. But was there ever a period, I mean, like, because you rehabbed so hard against every doctor's wish for you. Have you struggled with survivor's guilt of going like, why me? Why did I survive that and 16 others didn't?
More so shortly after the crash, and James especially. I mean, he was there because I told him to come join my team. It was something we had talked about, something that he loved the idea of. It was something that he wanted to do. He was thrilled to be there. He was having a great time. But he was there because I asked him to come. I'm probably the first person I called when I had the opportunity to build this team. But that experience with James relieved me of a lot of that survivor's guilt. I knew he was okay. And I'm assuming that everybody else was too. And knowing that took a lot of that pressure away. And having him say, go get control of the situation, when I had no idea what the situation was, I woke up with this attitude of, all right, let's find out what the situation is. Let's see. This already, it was so much easier, for lack of a better word again, to handle the situation, having had him prepare me for it, prepare me for waking up, and prepare me for walking into the situation with the conversation we had.
When you came out of the coma, having just had, I think it's almost more appropriate to say, that clear vision, did you already know? Like, you didn't know what happened, but when people, did you already know that James was gone?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I didn't know how it had happened. We were together a lot. We may have been in a car together. It may have been it may have been a skydiving accident, except we were very safe skydivers, and I never would have expected that. It could have been we were training out of the Cessna, because there was times we were still jumping the Cessna back then. I had no idea how it happened, but I knew James was gone, and I know when I asked what had happened, their biggest concern was how they were going to tell me that James was gone, and they didn't have to.
One thing, Dan, is the name of the team was Perris AirMoves. I don't think a lot of people realize that your teammates, one of them was Troy Widgery, who started, Go Fast energy drink, and Tom Falzone, a legend in his own right, and with quite a very respected resume. And it looked like touch and go for a moment, that you weren't going to be able to make it in time or get back jumping in time for the Nationals. And so the guy you call in is Kirk Verner. It's wild when we look at the paths and the journeys that all of you have been on since that time.
And we were pretty much all kids.
Mm.
Tom is a year or two older than I was, but he had just started competing. I had just turned 30. Kirk was, I guess, 26. James had just turned 21. But you're right; it's quite the crew.
Because you picked yourself up, and it just seemed like, at least the way that I interpret it, is you go straight marching in towards nationals, like gung-ho mission, I will get back. But how do you grieve amongst that? Like, I'm trying to compete at the highest level. Were you able to grieve?
The most difficult part was that most of the grieving pretty much had to be done alone. I had the privilege of being unconscious for 6 weeks while everybody else had been dealing with funeral after funeral and the actual loss. And I couldn't start putting them all back through that again. The grieving was done pretty privately, but again, having had that conversation with James made the grieving somewhat easier. And he made clear, just at his get control of the situation, made it clear to me that there was only so much I could be in control of, but I could be in control of my own journey, my own health. I was so lucky. I mean, I was so lucky I wasn't paralyzed. I was so lucky that, I had only, broken my neck, collapsed my skull, smashed my head, and been in a coma for 6 weeks, but I could still move everything. All my internal organs were still working. I wasn't thinking too clearly right off the bat, but it was clear enough. And just to be that lucky that I was still capable of recovering and coming back was such a gift, was such a blessing that it would have been wrong not to try to make the most out of that gift.
The accident happened in 1992, and I think a lot of people, when they think of Dan BC, it's almost as if that it's 1992 and then forward on, but there was a good 9 years before you got to 1992 where I believe the Knatzers offered you the opportunity for sponsorship, which allowed you to invite sort of the teammates of your choice, if you will. But for 9 years, you're living in a van, essentially, sort of, I mean, the way I visualize it is just doing whatever was necessary at the drop zone, doing whatever job there was to do, and living in a van to chase this dream. Tell me how accurate that actually is.
Well, during it's close. It's close. I did have a trailer for a while too, so it wasn't always the van.
Living it up.
I started jumping my freshman year in college at Ohio State. It was a tiny little club in Centerburg, Ohio, which is north of Columbus, near Mansfield. They rented a 172 from the local, flying club, and took the chairs and the seats and the door off of it, and that was it. That's what we jumped from. And at the end of the first year, I probably had 40 or 50 jumps at the end of the season, and they closed down, and I went down to Xenia, to the Greene County Sport Parachute Club at that time, which was pretty much near state-of-the-art drop zone for the early 80s. They had several airplanes. They were Cessnas, Twin Beaches, all painted the same. And I just wow, this place is amazing. It's amazing I made it through college. I was jumping so much down there. But so my first year basically had about 60 or 70 jumps. But I was at the drop zone so much that they offered, me a job. And basically the job at that time was pack all the round parachutes. Because it was all student round parachutes back then, and do everything basically. You mow the grass, you wash the planes, you clean the toilets, you do whatever there is to be done. And they said you can jump whenever you want to. And whenever I want to, and he's yeah, you jump all you want. I want a lot. I want to jump a lot. I said, yeah, whatever. Whenever there's a chance, if everything's done, jump. And we had so many round parachutes that I didn't really have to pack anything during the day. There's like 100 of them. So I bought a second rig for $150. So had, And these were both squares. I started on rounds. I learned on rounds, but I had two squares. But there was one with a hand deploy, one with a pull out, one that was a strato cloud, one that was a strato star. So one was basically 230 square feet, and the other one was 150. One of them had a 3-ring, the other one had R3s, which are a whole nother system to cut away. So I had two completely different rigs, and I got on every plane I could get on, and it did like 700 jumps the second year, which is a lot out of a Cessna drop zone.
Did Jim West regret the deal that he made with you? You get a little more jumps than he got.
I don't think so. I'd pack 100-round parachutes at night, and they'd be ready to go in the morning, and I'd be on the first load. Jim taught me to fly. So over the next couple of years, I got my instructor rating, my rigger's ticket, my pilot's license. I got, AFF and tandem they didn't even have yet. So I started competing in '83. Got on a 4-way team there. It was just, wow, just seeing 4-way for the first time was incredible and amazing flying. And I graduated in '84, and I wanted to do more 4-way. I wanted to do more 4-way. I wanted to be at the drop zone. And at the age of 22, I thought the best way to do this is to buy the drop zone, which I didn't have any money, though. So made a deal with Jim that was going to be 9 years of payments or something. Basically took over the drop zone, and at first was living in a trailer in the parking lot of the drop zone. AFF and tandem started shortly thereafter. I got my AFF and tandem ratings, kept doing the team every year, and was living there. After 1986, we managed to come in second place. We tied the Golden Knights, and got a medal in 4-way. And, we're still a team from Ohio doing 150 jumps a month or so, which is a lot. But thought, man, we could win this thing. And then the French team got sponsored, and suddenly now upped the ante completely. The French team was sponsored by TAG, the watch company. He bought them their own airplane, a turbine Pilatus Porter, bought them 2 sets of parachute equipment, hired Tom Perris, who is the current world champion, to be their full-time coach. Bought them a house a mile from DeLand drop zone. Had packers for them, hired full-time packers to pack because they had 2 rigs. No one had ever heard of that. And they were doing 1,000 jumps a year. And suddenly it was like, well, we can't compete with that. So I thought, if I'm going to try to compete with that, then I need to go someplace I can jump all year round and find 4 other people who have no sense. So I found them in Arizona. Then I was living in the van in Arizona. We started a team called Coolidge Force, which then AirMoves was after that, and then Airspeed after that.
A quick break here to address the drop zone owners listening to the pod. If you're a DZO, then you know the insanity of taking your passion and making it your business. Why'd you do that? Running a DZ is hard. Between the stressors of liability, 30-day payment terms on fuel after 4 weeks of miserable weather, and angry staff who are convinced they've been skipped in the rotation, you need a tool that helps reduce your stress. Enter Burble software. All right. Conceived by a DZO who's been in the trenches just like you, Burble is the most sophisticated manifest and booking software on the planet. Your life as a DZO is hard enough. So don't be that DZO who tries to save a few bucks using software that wasn't built for us. Burble, the must-have drop zone management software for the 182 DZ to the multi-turbine monster. Burble. Did you feel conflict, though? Because here you are buying a drop zone, and then suddenly, whoa, my heart's telling me I really just want to do this 4-way thing. So how did you exit out of the DZ situation?
I pretty much gave everything back. The 5 years of payments were out the window, so it was okay for him. It's still, but I couldn't. I knew that I'd never be able to win, the world meet if I kept in. As far as our team had come in the nationals, the bar was completely reset when TAG got sponsored.
Can you give me a glimpse of your makeup? I said that you were dogged, and what I meant by that is the goal of, say, beating the Golden Knights and winning nationals has been going on for such a long time, from, starting off with 4-way in '83 and, still hadn't got there by the time your accident in 92. Where is this competitive spirit or drive come from? Because a lot of people would have quit.
It makes no sense at all. And it wasn't like I'm a naturally competitive person. I didn't grow up with competing at everything. But I just loved it, man. I just loved the flying. I loved the competition. I loved the challenge it was to me and to my teammates to try to just push this as much as we could. And to be, to jump all weekend, hoping to get 35 really good seconds, all the work in there just for that, all the effort that goes into it. But it was just the pure love of the sport. That was really all it was. And the better that we got, the more that I loved it. And I'd watch the French team, and then the Golden Knights started training harder than ever. And I'd see what they could do, which was I didn't even think was physically possible. And I would just know, man, I know I could do that. I know I can if I could just figure out how to get the opportunity to put the work in. And that was it. It's for all skydivers, if you think of it, all skydivers I think have a competitive nature. Just much of it competing against themselves, right? All of us start jumping. And if we can't continue to expand, if we can't continue to get better in some way, then usually people, they quit. They find something else to do. But most of the people that keep skydiving, it's because everything, even if you never compete as such, at the nationals or anything, just on your own, every improvement that you make, you can become a little faster at diving. You become a little better at this. It's to take on a new discipline. And that's it. That just the fun increases dramatically. You feel like you're flying. We are flying, and it just made me never want to give up.
How did you through the arc of your four-way, when you were professionally skydiving in four-way? How do you deal with, you have such a love, a fervency? What happens when you have a teammate that doesn't love it as much as you, or is not as committed in everything? How do you deal with that as a teammate?
Well, you try to not have anybody that doesn't. I mean, that's the first requirement, is you have to want it bad. You have to love it. You want to do your best, and this is at the level of, you called it a professional team, but it was never, there's no real, no one gets paid to do this. It's not actually a profession. It's all, the teams now, people look at the top teams and think of it like professional teams. It's all from their heart as much as it was for mine, even though there's more help financially than there used to be. But it's not a professional sport where you're, like basketball or something like that. At any level, when you have a team, you want to make sure the first most important thing is that everybody is equally committed. So when I start the team, if I'm committed, I want to win, I want to do 1,000 jumps, whatever. And another teammate is, well, winning would be okay, and I'd love to do it, but I want to do 200 jumps. Well, we may not have the same goal, but we need to agree on the same goal for at least that year, for that time, for that team that we're going to do. So it may be, okay, this is my best opportunity, the best team I could have at the moment. I have to back down from what my ultimate goal is. And hopefully this person will, with my enthusiasm balancing them, they'll put more into it. So hopefully we can agree on what the goal is for the team. And it may be less than what someone wants to do and more than somebody else. But you have to have that. Everybody has to understand what the commitment is, what that means. What does it mean to be committed? What's it really mean? How much work is involved? How many jumps are we going to do? How much are we going to be visualizing? How are we going to treat each other? How are we going to behave? There's so many questions to ask, but once you've set all these things, then they should, they're much more likely to come through once they know what it is they're signing up for. So you want to avoid the situation that you were saying happens, where one person just isn't as committed. Usually that's the case because people just don't know what they're signing up for.
One thing that struck me was after the accident and you're putting together the new AirMoves, I suppose, or just updating the team. And correct me if I'm wrong, you call a guy, I think his name is Tom Kahn?
I called Mike Trad.
Mike Trad, that's the name. And he was in college, and I was like, wow, if I recall, he dropped out of college to come join the team. I have that right?
He was less committed to college to join Coolidge Force, but he was still in college when he was on Coolidge Force. I believe he was out of college when we started AirMoves, but he wasn't on AirMoves to start with. He was the point flyer on Coolidge Force, very, very close friend, and I asked him to come and fill in for James and take that position. That was his position on Coolidge Force. It wasn't, it was going to be it was like a 2-month thing. So it wasn't like someone's committing forever, and he couldn't say no.
It struck me how he sort of dropped everything and like, I'm going to join this team. So Kirk was supposed to replace you, but then you ended up recovering. So Kirk didn't end up being on that AirMoves team. Is that correct?
Kirk still was. Kirk.
Okay.
I was planning on, I was getting the halo brace. I had a halo on. They screw this cage into your head when you break your neck. And my hope was they would take that off and I would need, a month or so to get ready, and then I'd be able to start jumping. And they took the halo off, and I lowered my head and my whole body went numb. They said, well, you've got to go right back in for surgery. So I had my neck operated on right then, and now we are basically 3 months before the Nationals. So I had to replace myself at that point. I had met Kirk at the 89 Nationals. He was on a team called the Magnet Men, and we became instant friends. You know how it is. You meet people like yourself, for instance, where you know you've got a buddy within minutes and have that kind of a relationship. And we competed against each other and with each other when I was on Coolidge Force. So we did 8-way together. We did 16-way together sometimes. And I thought, who can I get to come out here? Who will drop? And Kirk had a drop zone in Illinois that he and his dad ran. And I said, who can I get to drop everything and come out here right now? Who will just drop everything they're doing? And who he's also a very experienced 4-way competitor at that point, who could come in and just fill in for me and not be missing a beat. And I thought, Kirk will do it in a second. It was funny because he did, right? He did drop it. And he was just running the drop zone then, and he was doing fine. And he drove across to Paris, and he drove in this little, I think it was called a Stealth sports car, little cool sports car. And he pulled in, and I was like, Kirk, man, you need to sell the car. He's like, I'm not selling my car. I love this car. This is the coolest car ever. I was like, you won't have it in a month. He was like, there's no way I'd ever sell that car. Anyway, car was gone in a month. Because, we were, it's a quote unquote sponsored team, but that there's so many other living expenses, survival expenses, training expenses that you have to absorb. So anyway, the stealth was gone before the Nationals, I believe. So those are the guys that came out. And then after 10 weeks after surgery, I got back in the air. The team was, still training hard, and they're trying to put it back together in a very short amount of time. And, with guys who just been injured pretty severely and through a traumatic situation, the weakest part of the team for the training was when we had to do slot switchers on the jumps. In 4-way, there's times, it's a 5 or 6 formation sequence, but there's times that something in the sequence will flip people and it becomes a 10 or 12 point sequence. And the team just hadn't had time to train these different slots. And, I had much more experience than everybody else from the prior teams. I did a few jumps to practice with them to see how it was going. I'd been visualizing 4-way like crazy. So other than being really skinny and weak, I remembered how to skydive really well. And I filled in on the jumps at the Nationals that were the slot switcher jumps.
I didn't know you could do that.
You have an alternate on the team. You can have an alternate.
I always thought that the alternates came in lieu of maybe injury. I didn't know an alternate could come in lieu of what the dive plan was. I think you all were you all finished bronze in that meet? Yeah. Amazing.
That's correct. Yeah.
Did everyone around you just say, Dan, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? Slow down, stop. I mean, was sort of the voices in you were hearing?
Yeah, I think there may have been some of that, yeah. But it was, I was okay to do it. I I wasn't in any greater risk. After when I lowered my head, my whole body went numb. I was like, "Holy crap, man! This is bad." I mean, I was that close to becoming a quadriplegic, basically.
Mm.
But I said to the doctor, I said, what am I risking here? After the surgery, he goes, well, you'll never break where the surgery is. You've got a new vertebrae and steel plates holding it together. It could break above or below, but you'll never break that. And basically said, you're at no greater risk, really. I mean, once you get the strength back in your neck, once you get your muscles built back up and strength back, you're at no greater risk than you ever were.
Do you feel the effects of that accident today in your body?
It's the accident, but it's 31 years and having done another 25,000 skydives since then. And, it's a lot of miles, but,
yeah,
I do okay. I do okay.
There's so much detail. It's a shame to sort of gloss over it, but I mean, we could talk about this for hours in terms of the progression from that 92 bronze team and then, silvers and eventually winning nationals and then going on to win the worlds. I'll tell you what struck me, Dan, is I read that you said it took winning to discover that it wasn't all about winning. What does that mean?
At the 95 World Championships, was finally airspeed made it to the world meet, right? And this had been our goal for years. This has been the airspeed team was made up of the team from DeLand and the Perris AirMoves, and who had been adversaries going against each other this whole time. We put the strongest team together. We'd made it to the world meet. It was being judged live, so as we got under canopy, we could see what was happening, and we tracked off on round 10 of the 95 world meet and deployed our parachutes, and we saw people running out from the tent waving U.S. flags, and we knew at that point we had won. And we landed down there. Jack Jeffries, one of the teammates who is the leader of the DeLand team, so he and I were the two biggest adversaries prior to starting airspeed. And we landed down there, and there was a big celebration and lots of champagne and, lots of hugs and high fives and the whole bit. And then everybody kind of walked away, and Jack and I were sitting there by ourselves. And we just looked at each other and said, was that it? Was that it? And I think that was it. I was like, wow. So we're winners now. I guess we're winners now. And it was great. It was great, but to think of all the years, all the dedication, all the sacrifices, all the hard work that went into, if that was the whole reward for it, that was nothing. And what was worth it was all the sacrifice, was all the commitment, was everything that you put into it. The pursuit of that goal was way more important than actually achieving that goal. To have something that you were that committed to have something in your life that you wake up every morning so excited about, ready to take on the challenges, ready to face whatever you have to, because you love it that much that it's worth it. When there's nothing, there's really no prize other than the fulfillment of that dream and that joy. And had we never won, it would have still been worth it. Now, that being said, I'll take winning over losing any day. However, I lost a lot prior to winning, and it's not about the winning as much. It's about having something you love so much you want to win. Whether you do or not is not as important.
Yeah, sometimes I can say, I've had before getting into skydiving, I had a career in golf, and there's a famous golfer named David Duval that won the British Open or the Open Championship, and his response was, and he dominated in the sport, and he wins this most historic event, and he says, that's it. But the difference between he and you was he was never the same again. The juice was gone. It was almost like he got to the pinnacle he'd been dreaming about for so long and working so hard for. He gets it. The victory isn't quite as sweet as he imagined it to be. And his career was never the same. But that wasn't you.
Maybe I love skydiving more than he loves golf. I remember getting up the next day and I was like, man, I'm still 5'8". I thought I'd be 6'2" over here getting out of bed and as strong as an ox. Nope. Nope. My neck's still sore, but it was, I mean, I loved the winning part of it also, but if that's all it's about, it's not worth doing because you may never win. If it's all for that, you know, a lot of people have put the same effort into it, but you don't win. I mean, that happens a lot. So if that's all it's about, then it's very possible you're doing it for the wrong reasons. For me, it was out of the love of it more than anything. But I didn't really realize it until we won. I was like, oh, good, man, I'm glad I didn't pour it all my heart and soul for that. And then we went right back up and did it again.
Who are your skydiving heroes?
I have so many. So many. Well, James, for sure, is one. Just haven't had the chance to take him when he was 14 and watch what he could do and watch the pure joy, that childish joy, to really see it so genuinely. I mean, you see it in skydivers of all ages all the time, but to see it, from him in so many ways, James was. Chet Poland is another guy who only some of the old skydivers will remember, but Chet was a barnstormer in like the teens and 20s. And in the 80s, he was in his 80s. And he used to live in DeLand in his van. And then he'd come stay with us at Greene County in the summertime. Just what a guy, what a character. I mean, he was jumping when they only had one parachute and just doing it at shows out of, it was scary enough just to get in an airplane back then. And as soon as tandems were invented, he was like, let's go right now. Let's go right now. And just the way he approached life, making the most of every day, doing the things that he loved was fantastic. So many of my teammates, I could go on and on. There's so many people.
Got a random question here for you, Dan. What does your morning routine look like?
I get up really early without an alarm clock.
How early is really 4?
4:30. No alarm clock. I just wake up. I have coffee waiting for me, and go to the gym by 5:30 the latest, and get a good workout in. It's the workout that's changed a lot over the course of the years, but still get in there and do it every day. Be done working out by 7, usually at the drop zone by 8:30. If I'm going to the drop zone that day, which most of them I do.
Every picture I've ever seen of you, you're very physically fit, and particularly in the early 80s, going to the gym and being healthy wasn't as popular as it is today, or even 20 years ago. So why have you been so ahead of the curve on that?
I was really, really small growing up, and I was working at the Jewish Community Center, and they had a little gym. So I started going to it, when I was a teenager, but not doing that much, but at least getting introduced to the idea, and thought if I'm going to be this short, I may as well try to be strong, minimally, but an introduction anyway, more than most 13-year-olds or 15-year-olds. But my biggest motivation was my freshman year in college. I was 18, was hanging out with a few friends at a bar. The drinking age in Columbus was 18 at that time. And my lung collapsed, just sitting there. Just sitting. I didn't know what it was, but I suddenly got this really bad pain in my chest. Wow, what the hell is that? And I walked home, which was like a mile, and laid down, and I had this terrible pain in my chest. It wasn't going away, so I walked over to the university hospital, and they said, your lung collapsed. And I was like, what the heck? What are you talking about? I said, what were you doing? I said, I was sitting there having a beer. I was doing nothing. It was my first beer. Now, and I've never been a big drinker, so it wasn't like it was a big party thing. But either way, I said, how could it collapse? And they said, well, you must just have some weak areas of your lung. And I said, well, how do you make them stronger? And they said, you really can't do anything to make them stronger. And I said, well, how do I protect them? And they said, well, I don't know how you protect them. It's what else could make this happen? They said, if you get hit hard in the chest, it could do it. And I described opening shock to them. And they said, that sounds like something that could make your lungs collapse. And I thought, I was just started jumping. I was, man, well, that's unacceptable. And I said, well, what if I just build up my upper body so it's like a big shield to protect my lungs? And they were like, well, that'll work. That should help. So I started working out, and the working out was pretty much like 12 sets of bench pressing every day. Just because it was just for the purpose of protecting, my lungs. When I first started, I worked out a lot, but that was the reason. And then after the plane crash, they said, had you not been in such good shape, you never would have made it. And I thought, well, I think I'll try to stay like this. Try to stay healthy, try to stay strong, try to stay in as good shape as I can, because life will throw some more curveballs at you. And if you're lucky enough to just get old, then there'll be that curveball. So tried to stay in shape my whole life. Mm.
So you get to the DZ around 8, and you are the general manager for arguably one of the largest and best drop zones in the world. What does a typical day look like for the DZM of Skydive Perris?
There is no such thing as a typical day. Fortunately, we have a great staff, and they don't need me at all. So I go and I, check in with everybody, see what's going on. I love every part of it. I love going to the tunnel and seeing the young students and new jumpers and people flying in the tunnel. I love going down to the school and seeing the enthusiasm of the new students there. I love to do AFF anytime I can. I decided I was going to stop tandems. I don't need that wear and tear anymore, but love doing tandems also. Work with the pilots, just keep up with them. I'll just go and jump, see who's jumping, and get on the load, take care of that. And then there's all the, of course, planning for all the events and all the back office things, which there is an endless list of, as you know. My door is open, and I'm right in the middle of everything. And if I sit in there too long, somebody says, "Hey, Dan, you're on a 5-minute call." And I say, "Well, I can't go." They said, by the time you tell me you can't go, you'll be down from the jump. Get your crap, but go get your gear and go. And then I'm on a load. So it's great. It's the best job in the world. I love it. I love the community. I love the Knatzer family that owns it. They're some of my closest friends. We all share the same vision for what we want to have. We want to have the best drop zone in the world. And the best drop zone in the world is, of course, one that is as safe as it can possibly be. So everybody's looking out for each other all the time. The planes are well taken care of. The jumpers are watching out for each other. The safer we can keep it, the better it is. And it's also something that just welcomes everybody crazy enough to jump out of an airplane. If you want to, we don't care. You're there, you want to make a jump, you are welcome. You're one of the family immediately. And it's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful environment.
Shannon Pilcher, a few weeks ago during our podcast interview, said, Paris, they always do it first class. And what he was specifically referring to was, I don't remember the year, I want to say maybe 2005, but I could be wrong, when his team won open class 4-way against the Golden Knights in a jump off. And I actually remember people that were there where apparently there was this big screen and you were getting live judging on the big screen or, near the pool area. And I just thought, wow, that's so great. Why don't we see that in more nationals? That just revs up the excitement. But I heard that. I'm like, yeah, Paris, ahead of the curve. That was awesome.
Pat and Melanie it's not enough to just have a drop zone. For them to sleep at night, they need to know that they did everything they could to make it the best place it could possibly be, even when it comes to things like that. And that's the kind of, it's what I want to be a part of. That's the kind of drop zone I want to be at.
You have been in one of the most viral videos on YouTube ever made, certainly for skydiving. And
Oh boy.
that video
I'm terrified, wondering what this is.
When Tom Cruise and James Corden jumped at Paris, I think I saw a little bit of your shoulder in the Skyvan right before they launched. But tell us about that, because every time I watch that video, and I've watched it a few times, it is so funny. It went viral because it was so good. But can you share the experience of having Tom Cruise and James Corden on the drop zone and what that day was like?
There's a lot of times we do a lot of Hollywood stuff in Paris because that's where we are. Much of it I'm not that involved with. Scott Smith was coordinating a lot of this. Craig O'Brien was filming it because Craig had just filmed Mission Impossible with Tom. They asked me to put Tom through the refresher course, basically. He had about 200 jumps, but he hadn't jumped in a year or whatever. He really didn't have an opinion one way or the other, but if I'm going to put somebody through the refresher course, we're going to do it, right? I've put friends with thousands of jumps through it, and they're like, wow, we're really glad we covered all that stuff because you need to, right? And I was kind of thinking, man, I bet Tom is just going to think, can we just get this over with, please? I know we have to do it, but, I got it. It's what I was expecting from him. He wasn't going to die on my watch. So I put him through just I was put anybody else through. I was really impressed he paid attention to every detail. He was, man, you know what? I haven't had it explained that way before, and that's really good. Let's go through that again. He really showed me how, a guy who decides to do all of his own stunts like that and does many of them that are far more dangerous than normal skydiving. I mean, we don't even think of that as a stunt. He better make sure he has it together. And he really paid attention to all of it, had it dialed in tight, was really good. I was very confident in his understanding and ability to handle any situations that came up. We did a few skydives together, and he did remarkably well for someone with 200 jumps over 10 years or 20 years, however long he's been jumping for. And really, he was enjoying it. He was having a great time, and they just had fun being ridiculous. It was pretty much unplanned and unscripted as far as I know. And I was only on the airplane as we have to have a safety person on there just to make sure it's all going as it's supposed to. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and they took it as seriously as it needs to be while having a great time and just making the most out of it. Yeah.
With celebrities coming to Paris, Tom Hanks has jumped there, David Blaine, Miley Cyrus, and I know you don't have a lot of necessarily personal interaction, but you've met a lot of people coming through there, celebrity or otherwise. Is there anyone that's come through the drop zone or in your adventures that really impressed you?
It's not that uncommon that we have, some celebrities coming through. And for the most part, the jumpers in the drop zone doesn't get that excited about it. We're at the drop zone. It's kind of cool, but they're doing their own thing, and we're jumping. We're busy. So it's not that big of a deal until Joe Kittinger showed up. When Joe Kittinger showed up at the drop zone, the whole drop zone just about shut down because everybody wanted to walk up and shake Joe's hand. Everybody wanted that. As celebrities go, Joe Kittinger is much more a big celebrity on a drop zone than Tom Cruise or Patrick Swayze or Miley Cyrus or anybody else. And it was great to have Joe there, thinking this as well. Felix and the Red Bull team were planning on doing that one, that high altitude one before Alan did his. But to have Joe there, Joe who did it in 1960 when he had like 35 jumps, it's a pretty crazy thing to do now. But for him to do it then and to have the courage and the balls to do that, he's just an amazing human being. It was wonderful to get to sit down and talk with him. We've lost him now, but so glad to have had that privilege to have had the time. And he was by far the biggest celebrity that's ever walked on the drop zone.
I had never met him. I've heard him speak, but I've heard he was just a wonderful man.
What a character. I mean, his life had challenges that my life's been way easier than that. I've never had to do anything like what he's done.
This podcast is sponsored by Beyond Marketing, the digital marketing agency for the skydiving industry. As avid podcast consumers ourselves, we're not fans of ads during a podcast, So we'll spare you the details about why we love building websites and helping businesses show up in Google search results. But just know this, we're passionate about the skydiving industry and how it markets itself. Look us up at dropzone.marketing. Again, that's dropzone.marketing. So Dan, you've won world championships, World Cups, national championships many times over. You've skydived in some of the most amazing places all over the world. You've met some incredible people. I almost loathe to ask the question because no skydiver seems to be able to answer it well. Like, what was one of the most notable skydives you've made when you've made 30,000? But is there one that you could sort of say, yeah, that particular jump was really badass? Is there one that was like, wow, I can't believe I did that?
I mean, there's several.
I'm sure.
I mean, the biggest one is still the first one. Nothing ever surpasses that. My first jump. I mean, that will never be forgotten. That is, the experience that led my life the direction that it has gone for the last 43 years since then. And every time I see students walk on the drop zone to do their first jump, I'm still right there with them. I still remember what it was like. What it was like showing up at the drop zone that first day. That it was just a miracle you made it. You made it to the drop zone. You were begging for your car not to start. You were begging for traffic to be bad. You were begging for it to be raining. Please, please give me an excuse, but you still made it. You parked in the parking lot. You walked in. They walk in so slowly, sometimes forcing one step after another, but they showed up, and I can remember all of that. So the first jump, I think for everybody will always go down as a huge one. There were jumps. I mentioned two particular jumps in competition that I talked about in my book also, which were just huge moments for me. There was really dumbass jumps, like jumping out of cars, rolling them out the back of sky vans and almost killing myself in the process. That had its own special uniqueness. It was a good lesson in what not to do. But there's been so many, and to tell you the truth, my favorite jump's usually the last one I did. I was on the drop zone the other day. It was 110 degrees. It was a super hot day, and the wingsuiters room is right next to my office. And a few of them walked over in their shorts, and they said, "It's too hot for a wingsuit. Let's go make a jump. You're coming with us." Went up with the wingsuiters in our shorts and made a jump, and it was great. Had a great time. Just watching them try to dock on a two-way was fabulous. Everybody got there, but it was working so hard. It felt like me when I jumped with them in the wingsuit. And it was great. So I still enjoy every jump I get to do.
What was the circumstance that even led you to the first jump?
I had wanted to jump all my life. I remembered when fantasizing about flying as a little kid. I think lots of kids dream about flying. That was my biggest fantasy, whether it was a superpower, the best superpower in the world and the best superhero skill in the world, or whether it was watching birds, watching birds fly and thinking, how great is that? How cool is that? And after my father passed away when I was still 4, my mother moved my brother and I to Hawaii. And this is 66, 67 when Hawaii wasn't like it is now. And just watching the birds there and just thinking about how great it would be to be able to fly. And at that point saw a TV show. I don't know if it was Ripcord or Gypsy Moths or something. It was the first time I actually saw people in free fall, saw them flying, flying, a person flying, unattached to any man-made flying machine. And from that time when I was 6 maybe or 5, however old I was, I thought, I'm doing that. I'm doing that as soon as I can. So as soon as I turned 18, and it was winter, my birthday's in February, so I had to wait for spring. But as soon as I could, I went and did the first jump.
Had you ever, other than what you saw on TV, had you ever seen an actual skydiver before getting to the drop zone?
I don't think so.
Being a former drop zone manager of a much smaller drop zone than the one you run, I certainly had a few pet peeves. What is a Dan BC pet peeve on the drop zone?
I mean, there's two, basically. One is just people being unintentionally complacent and putting themselves in dangerous situations and not even know it. because they think they've got it together, and they don't. They're taking on jumps or equipment or whatever that they just have no business doing, and they don't get it. They don't get it. If they realized how stupid it was, they wouldn't do it. But they've become just so complacent and overconfident because nothing's really gone wrong yet. So they mistake that for how well prepared they are for any situation. I mean, I've written a bunch of articles and videos on safety things because it's the most important thing, man. I've lost way too many friends and seen people get hurt when it never should have happened, and gotten away with stuff myself where I was just pure luck that I didn't get hurt or didn't die. It's my most important mission in the sport right now, and has been for probably the last 12 years, is just trying to keep everybody alive so I can have more fun with them, because it cuts into my fun when they hurt themselves. It's all about me. So the safety thing is a constant pet peeve. And in Paris, we're pretty good. I mean, as a safety culture on the drop zone, we try to beat it into people's heads to be staying on top of it and not being complacent. And I think overall it's pretty good like this. And the other pet peeve is just, mean people, which we also have pretty much built out of our culture. So once in a while, there'll be someone who's just behaving in a way that's just not nice, for lack of a better way to put it. And we don't allow that. We have two very strict rules at Paris. One is don't be dangerous. The other one is don't be a dick. So we try to stick to those all the time.
I imagine if Dan BC is mad at me for one of those two reasons, I would take note. I don't want Dan BC mad at me.
I don't get mad that easily. I mean, it's usually if I see a safety thing, it's just, the first thing I do if I see someone do something that they just got lucky and they could have gotten hurt, the first thing I usually do is just hug them, because I'm so glad I'm not doing CPR. And just make sure they know that it is from the heart, man. That with the safety advice I'm going to give you now, I'm not angry at you. I'm thrilled that you didn't hurt yourself. But if they come back with just ridiculous, arrogant, uneducated, ignorant comments, well, then sometimes I might get a little bit angry. But for the most part, that's not the case. And with the mean people, usually just try to have fun with them and break them of their misguided ways, or just break them, whatever.
Dan, let's pivot for a moment. You are now a professional speaker and speak in front of major brands. What is your messaging to these major corporate brands? How are you bridging the gap from skydiving to the corporate world?
I really tried to write my book so it wasn't for skydivers. Clearly, there's lessons learned through skydiving in it, and skydivers can relate to it, I think, in a special way that non-jumpers may not, but it's not written for skydivers. It's written for anybody. And it's the lessons I've learned about really passionately following your dreams, putting together a good plan for how to accomplish them, how to face it when you run into obstacles and roadblocks, how to build a team, what it really means to build a team. All these things that occur to anybody who is striving to achieve any ambitious goal, including pretty much every business and the teams that the businesses create towards their goals. So it's all lessons learned through my experiences, but ones that people can relate to in any field. I've spoken for military groups, several banks, for the Canadian agriculture industry. I mean, as far removed from skydiving as you could be. So I guess the message gets across.
If somebody listening would want to hire you as a speaker, how would they get a hold of you to bring you in?
You can start just by going to my website, which is Brodsky-Chenfeld.com. There's emails there as well. Contact me at Skydive Perris. I'm not hard to find.
Not hard to find. Let's talk about aging. You referenced on your social post actually as recently as yesterday that welcome to 61. We're doing things now that I didn't have to worry about before. And I will say personally, by the time this comes out, I'll be at the ripe age of 46. And I have an awareness of those things that I said, yeah, one day I'm going to do those things. The day is now that I need to start doing these things. much less that there's no guarantee of tomorrow. But how are you managing with aging? Because your zeal for skydiving is so big, you're in great physical shape, but we all sort of have to deal with our mortality, I guess. How do you manage that? You don't want to slow down. You love skydiving, but nature says you're probably going to have to at some point.
I mean, I've already, slowed down. Fortunately, one is stay as healthy as you can possibly stay. And I think I try to keep a good sense of humor about it because I think that's the first key. And it's a losing battle, right? I mean, you're going to lose. Sooner or later, you're going to lose. But try to go down swinging as best you can, put up as good a fight as you can, stay as healthy, as strong as you can, continue doing the things that you love to do. I still am going to the Nationals, 2 weeks from now. And every year, somebody asks me, man, do you miss it? Do you miss trying to go for the gold? Do you miss trying to win? I'm like, yeah, of course. It was amazing experiences. I treasure and cherish every moment and teammate, everything I did. It's great. Of course I miss it. And they say, well, would you want to do it again? I said, no, I wouldn't want to do it again. I don't have the desire to want to win that like I used to, and to have to put all the work that goes into it. I'm so proud of the teams that were just at the World Cup, and just, U.S. pretty much swept most of it. I look at the airspeed guys now, and it's still, I feel like the Godfather or something, but just so proud of what they've accomplished. Any opportunity I can get to jump with them is great, but I know the work that it takes. I know how hard it is, and it was worth it to me all the years that I did it. But I stopped because I anticipated that, next year may be the year that I might wake up on a few days and wish I wasn't doing it. And I'm going to quit before that happens. The goals that you have, I don't have the same goals I had then. I still love skydiving just as much, and I'm still doing it plenty, and I'm still having a great time with it. But the goals change. The goals change. So I think continue doing the things that you love, continue discovering new things that you might want to do. Keep at it. Keep at it. Make every day worthwhile. Get out of bed before the sun comes up and go to the gym so you're ready for whatever hits you next.
As you look at the landscape of formation skydiving today, is there any one or couple of jumpers that have caught your eye, like the mark is on them? Greatness.
I mean, there's many, and it's funny looking back at it and just recognizing this mark. I recognize it having been on so many teams and built so many teams and brought up so many new teammates. I think I've got a pretty good eye for that mark, and especially also on the newer jumpers as well. I remember at the 94 World Cup Airspeed's first international competition, where the first time we were trying to beat the French team, the tag team who had been the world champions for the previous 10 years, basically. And we were pretty confident just because we are. We had trained up. We were ready to go. We came with that attitude that we knew we were going to have a good fight with the top French team there, but we're confident. And I saw this young French team, the whole new group of guys. And I remember saying to my teammate, you see those guys over there? They're going to be a problem. Those guys are going to be a problem. And we ended up beating the team that was there. We won again in 97. Those guys got us in 99. I remember seeing most of the airspeed teammates over the years when they were just kids getting started, and seeing how, that I can tell they've got the fire, they've got the desire, they've got the potential, they've got no sense. I think they're going to go far. So I think we have plenty of people like that and disciplines across the board.
Forever it was the 20 points was like the 4-minute mile. It was, would anyone ever break it? And now it's blown away. You as a fan, when you observe, are you amazed at what you're seeing today?
Absolutely. It's great. When the highest that we got up to, I think, was 22, and there weren't any wind tunnels, and the busts were 2 points. So you were a little bit more careful about it, a lot more careful about it. But I've loved looking at our videos before from back then and looking at what the guys are doing now. And I say guys, girls, whatever, because it doesn't matter in formation skydiving. It's pretty much equal playing field for everybody. Just to see how far they've come with those tools and doing the things that we only dreamt about doing. And I remember when we did 22, I was like, you know what? I can taste 24. I can taste it. I mean, because whatever you're doing, you're always leaving points on the table. And we did 22. But if we did this here and this there, we could have had 24. 24 sitting there. I know what 24 is going to feel like. The thought never occurred to me what 27 was going to feel like, or 28 was going to feel like. And to watch it now is just incredible. I'm still trying to win the airspeed raffle so I can get in there for a day and try to keep up.
Dan, last question. Tell me about a crossroads moment that, when presented with an option to go one way or a different way, that you took that gets you here. Maybe you didn't take. We wouldn't even be talking right now.
You know, there's several, and I think I've mentioned a lot of them in my book, where there's something you really didn't plan for, but you can just feel in your gut that this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do now. I mean, I think the world works in some amazing ways, and I think opportunities are presented to us quite frequently, especially if, you know, when I decided I want to win the world meet. I've got this dream, I've got this passion, I want to do everything I can do to do it, and I was so driven to it, and I was making decisions that I thought would lead me there. Suddenly, that path is going to bring you across other people's paths who have a similar vision and a similar dream. And you have to have your eyes open. You have to realize that any person you meet anytime, anywhere could be that person. So to be open to that possibility and not to walk around with your doors closed, your headset on and your shades on, and not seeing and hearing and touching everybody that's around you. Just one that comes to mind. I had left Ohio. I was on my way to Paris. This is in the fall of '88. Paris had a team called the Gumbies, who my team from Ohio had done 8-way with and 10-way with, and we were pretty much the two of the top civilian teams, two of the three top civilian teams. And I thought when I decided I want to go find teammates, I thought those guys would be a blast. We'd have a great time together. I still jump with one of them quite a bit. Dan Palash is his name, and we still all the time we're jumping together. It's fabulous, the relationships you build. But that's a different question. And I was driving. I was going to take a couple weeks and drive across the country in my van and just get off the highways and go through everywhere. But I was so excited about this. I thought, I got to be there now. I got to go now. I'm going right now. And I just took off and I just drove pretty much straight across the country. And I was coming through Arizona. I believe I was on the 8 freeway. It was just sunrise, basically. So it was maybe 5 o'clock in the morning. And the sun was just starting to come up. And the sunrise in Arizona is like the sun sets. It's just incredible. I've been driving all night, and then there was this just gold ball that was to the east, you know, as I was coming. And I saw up on the sign, Coolidge, the sign to the town of Coolidge. And I remember that there was a drop zone at Coolidge, and that the national champions, led by Tom Paris, had come from there in 1981. That wasn't on my way there, though. I was on my way to Paris, but there it was. It was just right there. And there was this sun coming up, which looked like a big gold medal, which was the direction of Coolidge at the time, because it was east of where I was driving. I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a detour right now and just go and see what's going on. Whatever ridiculous time in the morning it was, I got to the drop zone. The only person up and around was this guy who was, you know, probably 10 or 15 years older than me. And his name was Larry Hill, who is the owner of Skydive Arizona. And we're the only people there. We're the only people awake. You know, as I drive my van on after driving all night, you know, he starts telling me about he had just opened the drop zone in Coolidge. He had a smaller place before, and he wanted to build the biggest training center. Four-way was just starting to take off. All the activity was in DeLand. Everything was in DeLand because DeLand had Tom Perris, who was the guy who had started the drop zone, the team in Coolidge. Bob Hallett was in DeLand. That's where the tag team was, and that's where it was really taking off. And he said he's going to try to make Coolidge into the biggest training center in the world, make Skydive Arizona into it. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm looking for a team. I'm looking for teammates. I want to win the national. I want to win the nationals. I want to win the world mate." And he said, "What have you ever done? Have you ever competed before?" And I said, "Yeah, I won the silver medal, 2 years ago." So I was the closest thing he'd seen to a four-way champion in some time, and he was the kind of drop zone I would need to be at to try to build the team I wanted to build. We basically started talking about what ultimately became Airspeed. Had I not made that turn at 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever stupid time of morning it was, I wouldn't have stopped there. And then within an hour, Jim Hotsey showed up, who was organizing that day and was looking for a team. A guy named Jeff Root was there, who has a drop zone. He had one in New Jersey, I believe, or Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Was there. He and Jim were trying to build a team. Neither of them had ever been to the Nationals before. I called Mike Trad to see what he was doing. He said, "Hey, by the way, I happen to be moving out. I'm going to go to school in Tucson." And he was on his way out there and started my first team in Arizona and building that relationship with Larry. But had I not, just out of pure gut instinct, decided to detour 30 miles into the desert back east when I'd been driving west for the last 32 hours, I don't know that there ever would have been, an Airspeed or whatever. That's where it all started in that first conversation.
Incredible. And the rest, as they say, is history. You, Kirk Verner, Jack Jeffries, Larry Hill. Forgive me for anyone else that I've missed, but
Mark Kirkby.
This era, this hotbed, all in the Hall of Fame. It's just crazy.
It is pretty crazy, and we never would have guessed. Back then, we were just kids wanting to turn points fast. We were just driven for no reason other than we just love it. We can't not do it. We have to do it. But here we are 30 years later and don't regret a thing.
When I think of skydiving images, Dan, the one that I hold in high esteem, I go, wow, is you and Jack and Kirk and Mark walk into the plane. The photo was taken by Ted Wagner, and it's the four of you young guns about to sort of slay the giants. It's about greatness is about to show itself. It's an extraordinary photograph, and it seemed like you all were unaware that it was even being taken.
I know which one you're speaking of. I think I've got it right here in the book. Looking at that picture, you can just see the friendship and the brotherhood that was built amongst this team. And starting from Jack and I were adversaries for no other reason than we're punk kids, and that's the team we need to beat. So let's be enemies, because that's what stupid punk kids do, But by the time we had gotten to that picture, the respect, the brotherhood, the trust, counting on each other. You can't do it without your teammates. You are counting on these guys. You're trusting them completely. You have their heart in your hands, and your heart is in theirs. And the friendships and the love that builds, and you can see it in that picture at the moment. When I look at it, that's what I see. And had we never won, we still would have had that. And having that is probably why we won.
Dan, I have enjoyed this conversation.
Jim, nice that we finally had a chance to have it,
Yeah, I feel like I've been on a journey with you in the last 90 minutes. Thank you for your generosity. You are a consummate professional. You're a skydiver. You have no ego despite your accomplishments that makes you unapproachable in any way. I am honored to say that I'm a friend of yours. Thank you for all you do for our sport and how you represent everybody.
Thank you, James. Let's keep it up and do a lot more.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for listening to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you always have the latest episode downloaded, and leave a review if you really enjoyed the episode. If you want to contact the team, our email address is info@beyondmarketing.xyz. This episode was edited and engineered by Garnet Znydrick of the YouTube channel Blue Skies, Fun Days. Thanks for listening, and join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.